A Giants podcast for Giants fans
By Giants fans.
from the offseason to the wins and the losses. It's time to take one Giant step.
Welcome in to One Giant Step. We're at the end of May here, June around the corner. OTAs going on, and the Giants, Bryce, Gelman, with full attendance at OTAs. So on this episode of One Giant Step, I think just a couple notes to go over, a couple things, and have a mini discussion about the Giants quarterback room as well as we kind of set up the summer. So I'm Shaun Morash, he's Bryce Gelman, at Shaun Morash on Twitter, at Bryce Gelman on Twitter, X, whatever the hell you're calling it these days. And, of course, download, subscribe to One Giant Step. Everywhere podcasts are available. Check us out on the WFAN YouTube page as well. They seem to be liking the clicks over there. So thank you all for joining us. All right, Bryce, first and foremost, no nonsense, no waiting around for Aaron Rodgers because Russell Wilson's here. The Giants have full participation for OTAs. We are taping this on the Thursday morning during OTAs, so we hope, knock on wood, no other injury news breaks. Yeah. Malik Neighbors has missed a practice there with a toe injury that I was shocked to hear this, Bryce, goes back to college. Now, I'm not going to hit the panic on anything Malik Neighbors has going on because if he had a toe injury going back to college, well, I would say that it worked out pretty well in his rookie year. Didn't really show signs of said toe injury in college. But nonetheless, anytime you hear a Malik Neighbors injury, it does scare you. That's point number one I have. Are you worried at all about Neighbors?
No, I mean, I think this would be more overblown if it was actually an issue. Like, I think that, the beat writers would start getting on Dable. I think it's so funny listening to Brian Dable speak. There's no coach in all of New York sports media that understands the media as much. He never gives a full answer, but it's just hilarious watching that press conference. And then he says that. Like, where did that come from? You don't say anything. All of a sudden, Malik Neighbors has got an injury that goes back to college? What?
It was very odd. Very odd the way he went about it. Yeah. That was number one. Here was number two, my other big takeaway from the early part of OTAs. Jaylen Hyatt. Now, on one hand, Jaylen Hyatt, the Giants made sure to work in, I guess it was on Wednesday, Jackson Dart with the ones and some red zone stuff, which I thought was telling, right? They're already giving him a look with some starting players and whatnot. And he works the back of the end zone, finds Jaylen Hyatt working with the ones who scores a touchdown. By the way, don't look, but it was Paulson Adebo and Javon Holland who were on the coverage there, and Jackson Dart beat him with Jaylen Hyatt.
Time to panic.
You want some negative on that, your two big free agent additions. But Jaylen Hyatt catches the touchdown. Look, it's a practice touchdown, so I'm not going to hoot and holler or do anything. But I do find this very interesting because there was a story that came out, Bryce, and I'm not sure if you had saw this, so we didn't speak about it before him. But about Jaylen Hyatt basically becoming mentally checked out last year, being at odds with the front office, odds with the coaching staff. Look, I'm disappointed in what Jaylen Hyatt's career has been. I'm very happy that he was a third-round pick and not a first or a second-round pick because, some mock drafts that year had him as high as that. Giants got him in the third. It hasn't worked out. There's a part of me because knowing and watching Jaylen Hyatt at Tennessee, and like many of you are probably aware of, his strength is going down the field, catching balls, using his speed, and his knock was, the route tree and all of that. There is a part of me that looks at the Giants offense the last 2 years and Daniel Jones's, whether it's gun shy from the offensive line or just reluctance to do what he did early in the career, which was throw the ball down the field, and wonder, did that hurt Jaylen Hyatt? Would Jaylen Hyatt have been able to grow in those other ways as a receiver if he was doing and having success at the thing that he was brought in to do? And the Giants offense literally handcuffed him from that ability. Now, he's clearly not Malik Neighbors or even Darius Slayton, who could catch the slants and go, but we never even got a chance to see Hyatt really play to his strengths. Very, very briefly in that Patriot game because Tommy DeVito was allowing him to 2 years ago. So, Bryce, they had Jaylen Hyatt working out on special teams on Wednesday, which, again, if you're going to be a fourth or fifth receiver, guess what? You're going to have to do some special teams work. And Jaylen Hyatt's speed as a gunner, look, I'm not going to throw him all the way out. He has to have that mindset, so I'm fine with that. But I did just find it interesting. He was out there with the ones. Dart found him. Russell Wilson with the moon ball. Clearly, Dart is not afraid to throw the ball down the field. There is a part of me that while I don't expect it, and I think there's a fair chance he gets cut, that if OTAs are maybe our first little opening that we don't want to ignore, that the Jaylen Hyatt story is not necessarily closed with the New York Giants.
Yeah, I mean, listen, they acquired him to be a deep threat, and they didn't have a quarterback who could throw down the field.
Right.
It's just counterintuitive. You use a 3rd-round draft pick for a guy who can't even get the ball. Like, that's his major strength. Listen, we don't know what his potential is. Obviously heard, earlier on when Russell Wilson was signed by the Giants, and he reached out to Jaylen Hyatt and said, listen, we're going to work with you, and we're obviously, realize your potential. I think that obviously I don't want to see the guy cut. If he's at odds with the front office, I can understand why. He doesn't feel like he's been utilized to the fullest extent. I don't think they can cut him. I think they can get, maybe a 7th-round pick, maybe, or 6th-round pick. Maybe.
That's a good point.
I don't think it's worth the cutting. I feel like, you could get some value out of him, Shaun.
But Bryce, I'm at the point here where it's year 3. Now, I can't tell you what's going on behind closed doors, if he was really at odds with the coaching staff or whatever. But clearly at OTAs, at least, the coaching staff is willing to give Jaylen Hyatt an investment they put in. Again, brief opportunities with the ones, workshop him a little bit with the quarterback position. I look at this Giant wide receiver room, and clearly Wan'Dale Robinson is their slot. Malik Neighbors is their one. They just signed Darius Slayton back, who was once competing with Jaylen Hyatt to be that outside number 2, to be that number 2. I think depth's important here. And if I'm looking at Juice Wells, the undrafted free agent from Ole Miss, and maybe I'll fall in love with him in preseason, maybe. If I'm looking at Lil Jordan Humphrey, he's already been cut and brought back. And I know he's, obviously a bigger dude, and that's a different kind of receiver. I don't think there's anybody glaring to me on the roster outside of the top 3 that tells me I wouldn't want another look at Jaylen Hyatt with a different quarterback room. That's all I'm saying.
Absolutely. I agree. 100%.
Okay. Now, speak for me for a second, Bryce, because I'm going to cough.
Okay. All right. I mean, listen, I think that
I failed to mute anyway. Don't worry about it. I'm an idiot. Here we are on one Giants that making all sorts of mistakes.
I think Jaylen Hyatt could be a really solid piece for this team with a guy like Russell Wilson, who's one of his main strengths is throwing the ball down the field. Man. So I listen, they're going to find out who Jaylen Hyatt really is this year. I think they'll have an opportunity to finally see if he's the deep ball threat that they thought he was when they drafted him in the 3rd round. So, this is make or break for him.
The other things to come out of this, Cam Scatterbo, full-blown psychopath. You like to see that. Evan Neal working at guard is something to keep an eye on.
My biggest prediction, I've been saying this for months now, he's going to be an amazing guard, and he's going to be their guard for the future at right guard. I really like.
Now, that would be something to come out of this camp and come out of the season is Evan Neal's career is saved before he went somewhere else. Like, it would be nice for Evan Neal as a 1st-round pick to turn into a guard. And guards cost money. And I don't think no matter what the year is that Evan Neal has here in year 4, I don't believe that he is going to have enough of a year that he makes a monster contract as a guard, like the Robert Hunt type contract. So I think if you can get him on an affordable, maybe he wants a short-term deal to prove it again, a 2-3 year deal, and he really does have a successful year. You can have your cake and eat it too, where suddenly you turn this busted 1st-round pick into a very good 1st-round pick guard at a position where people are getting paid more and more now that maybe get it on an affordable deal. Maybe it's asking a lot, but Bryce, I hope your prediction comes true and he wins that guard job and takes off because you don't want to waste these investments.
I kind of hope that Van Roten wins it. And then halfway through the year, Evan Neal comes up and he starts playing extremely well. You kind of hope Van Roten wins it so he doesn't have that value and then he can just leave in free agency. Someone's going to pay him.
I mean, I think this is a silly argument.
I know,
but if Evan Neal is going to have success at guard, and you're right, maybe it takes a little time, I would hope he wins it in camp. Actually, because you know what Greg Van Roten is, and I would hope that Evan Neal shows enough. Because Evan Neal's still not showing enough to win it by the end of August when they're giving him these opportunities. I don't know. That would be a little worrisome. Yeah. Now, the last thing I want to get to about OTAs here is the quarterback room. I mentioned Jackson Dart. They gave him some opportunity. They're really splitting things up. Him and DeVito still taking a lot of different reps. Russell Wilson has clearly been the QB1. And then there's Jameis Winston. And you know me, I've been negative Jameis. Bryce has been pro Jameis. And we're still getting the people. A lot of fun. You've been more pro Jameis than me when the Giants brought him. I want to take you through a timeline of events before anybody crushes me on this. The Giants bring in Russell Wilson to talk to him. Don't sign him. They're waiting around on Aaron Rodgers, who, by the way, is still making teams wait around on him. Matt Stafford thing had fallen through. The Giants, when I tell you no money at the quarterback position, like $2.5 million per year, signed Jameis Winston on that Friday night it was. there was a part of me that in real time understood it, because you want to make sure we were all in panic mode. We were doing one giant steps. Are they going to sign anybody for the quarterback room? I mean, they've left it go completely ignored. They got somebody in here. What was it? Within 48 hours, Russell Wilson had agreed to a deal with the Giants after that. And there was some thought. Again, this is why I'm connecting all the dots. Russell Wilson saw the Giants make a move at the quarterback position and realized he can't wait around forever on Pittsburgh. This is where I want to be. And clearly this is where he's wanted to be. I mean, how many freaking Madison Square Garden events and everything else does Russell Wilson need to be at? He gets brought in. He's paid more money than Jameis Winston. Then the Giants enter the draft with a spot where they don't necessarily have to panic take a quarterback, or have teams know they need a quarterback so desperately that they hold them over a barrel for a trade. The Giants are able to sit there at 3 and take Abdul Carter. And later on, Jackson Dart doesn't go. They couldn't control if the Saints took Jackson Dart. And they're able to trade up and strike at 25 for a guy that we now know behind the scenes stuff they loved, or at least Dable loved, Jackson Dart. So now we have begun camp. And this is going to be a talk. How many second-team reps does Jackson Dart get? How many third-team reps does Jackson Dart get? Russell Wilson's really only here for 1 year, but you signed Jameis Winston for 2 years. Jameis Winston comes out in his first pass on in OTAs, an interception. Again, it's OTAs, but this is who Jameis is. He's fun because he goes up and down the field and he says funny things. Jameis Winston's a turnover machine. Jameis Winston was a smart signing from a financial standpoint of just, hey, we need somebody who's played the position before, could throw for a lot of yards on this team. In the moves that have happened since, Russell Wilson came back, tail between his legs, and signed a 1-year deal. The Giants did land the quarterback that Brian Dable wanted in Jackson Dart. They could not control either of those variables before they signed Jameis Winston. Why am I saying this? Because as we watch OTAs and we watch Jackson Dart split some reps with Tommy DeVito, but then get first-team reps on the red zone, and we understand that they want a Russell Wilson here, at least for this year, to try to win some games, because Jackson Dart, the reason he's not a top 5 pick and he's picked at 25 is he's supposed to take a little time developing. Why is Jameis Winston here? Now that we're seeing the roster fleshed out.
He got paid.
Okay, but he didn't. He got paid such a minimal amount to get somebody in here baseline. My point is now, Bryce, as we go through OTAs, and right, injuries could happen, so maybe you want this here. My long-term prediction is I'm going to get to the end of August, and I'm going to once again ask the question I'm asking on May 29th, which is, why is Jameis Winston still here? And for anybody screaming and yelling about this, because there are a lot of pro Jameis Winston people, if you're establishing Russell Wilson as your veteran this year to start, at any point Russell Wilson gets hurt this year, are the Giants better off having Jameis Winston come in there, maybe throws for 400 yards, but throws 3 picks and you lose a game? Or are you better off at that point giving Jackson Dart some reps and trying to figure it out? If you're going to go down in a Jameis game because it's wild with turnovers, I'd rather go down with my rookie first-round quarterback getting those reps. And when it comes time for practice reps that are so, scarce with the way the practice schedule is, I don't want Jameis Winston taking away any first-team reps from Jackson Dart when I already have Russell Wilson. So whether it's the New Orleans Saints who, maybe want to make a trade for a Jameis Winston, maybe nobody does because he was signed for so cheap. The money is so inconsequential. I think Jameis Winston's presence, again, maybe he is there to help along and guide Jackson Dart and he has the right attitude. And there is some value to that. But on the field in those actual reps, Jameis Winston has to be structured as QB3 for this to work for me, Bryce. Has to be. Because if Jackson Dart is getting third-team reps, you are slowing down the process of developing him in practice. So it sounds nice to have 2 veterans and have this first-round rookie waiting. And it sounds nice to say, well, that's a good problem now. But it's not. Because there's a fine line here where you could actually slightly hinder the development about Jackson Dart. And before I let you respond, there's one more thing I want to add on to this. Because we've debated this on the Evan and Tiki show in the past when we were talking about the quarterback room. And it's something that I've stuck with, I've marinated with, and I'm here to go with. I know Tiki's big on this. Tiki believes, well, Jackson Dart will be like more of the guiding hand while Russell Wilson plays. But Russell's here for 1 year. Jameis Winston can be here for Dart the second year because he signed to 2 years. But the more I think about that, the more I would go, well, look, Jameis Winston was just signed for $2.5 million off the scrap heap this year. We waited. How many of these quarterbacks like Joe Flacco, all these backup type veteran quarterbacks that didn't go for big money were sitting there waiting. Why can't the Giants play this year with Russell Wilson and Jackson Dart And then at the end of the year, if that's it for Russell Wilson, he goes and he's a starter elsewhere. You don't think a Jameis Winston sitting around then in year number 2 to be the veteran backup or somebody like that? Of course it would be. You're not going to be screwed in the veteran backup market. So I don't know, man. I understood why they signed him, but now knowing the way the offseason happened, you signed him as a leverage piece. You ended up getting what you needed out of it. Russell Wilson and Jackson Dart. So you use Jameis Winston for leverage to get the other 2 quarterbacks in here. Financially, he's making no money. Get rid of him in training camp. Get rid of him. Make sure Russell Wilson doesn't get hurt. Jackson Dart doesn't get hurt. That needs to be a camp cut or a trade at the end of camp. Because if they enter this year with the 3 quarterbacks, 3 is too much a crowd to develop Jackson Dart. That is my firm placement, and that is something I think we will continue to hammer home, Bryce.
Maybe this is an argument that other people are going to be willing to make. As to the contrary, I don't see any problem in everything you just said. And I'm not going to go off on a 5-minute tangent like you just did, because I don't think I feel that strongly about it. But I do believe in Jackson Dart being the backup, and I do believe if the Giants season goes to crap, is Jameis Winston going to be the one to step up? No, absolutely not. Week 10, week 11, if the Giants have lost 8 games, Jameis Winston's not going to be starting. It's going to be Jackson Dart. There's no reason why you play Jameis Winston with Jackson Dart waiting in the wings. If you think he's going to be the quarterback of the future, and Shaun, look at what he's done in OTAs. He's taken first-team reps. Jameis Winston hasn't. He hasn't.
I can't confirm that. Are you confirming that?
That's what I saw. That's what I saw.
Okay.
I looked this morning. I don't know exactly if it's confirmed. I don't know if it's fake news, but that's what I heard. But listen, I think that there's a reason behind that if it's true. I think they're doing their due diligence, seeing what they have with Jackson Dart before maybe they make a move like you're saying right now, getting rid of Jameis Winston. But maybe they're also thinking, hey, we make Jameis Winston the 3rd-string quarterback. Hopefully he doesn't make a huge fuss about it. He's going to be the backup next year. And you just have that security of knowing you already have him on the roster. Instead of having to, to go out and look for a guy, you don't want a situation like you get Drew Lock at the last second. That was a disaster.
If Jameis Winston is taking strictly 3rd-team reps by training camp, and we're not costing Jackson Dart these reps, and he literally is there to be a 3rd-string inactive quarterback every week, fine by me. With the hope of he's in the system for a year and he's a good backup to have in year number 2. Fine. I live with that. But anything more than that's causing Jackson Dart less and less reps to accelerate this, I'm going to have a major issue with it. So a little OTA quickie here at a one giant step, and that's okay. That's what the offseason's about. And that's why you stick with us. You really need to hear another 12, 15 minutes of me breaking down Jaylen Hyatt? Do you? Well, if you do, keep sticking in throughout the offseason here on One Giant Step. At Bryce Gelman on Twitter and X. At Shaun Morash on Twitter and X. Hey, if there's something Giant related that comes to your mind that we're not putting out a tweet that says, hey, we're recording, here's a mailbag, shoot us a tweet. Say, hey, I'd like to hear your thoughts on this on One Giant Step. Then we'll know you're a listener, and we'll pop it up. And we'll answer that question.
We're going to start. We get a lot of comments on YouTube. I'm going to start jotting those down, and we'll answer some of those too. So drop a comment down below on the YouTube, or you can tweet at either of us, and we'll get to your question. I think obviously if you tweet us, it'll be better off because we see that, and I'm not always checking the YouTube comments. And sometimes I get hate comments, and I'm looking at those. Those are fun. But yeah, let us know. We obviously love to interact with the fans and the listeners. So
all right, sounds like a plan, Bryce. Thank you for everybody for taking one giant step with us.